At the end of the last episode, I left you with me welding up the brackets to mount the oil cooler, so we'll pick up right where we left off with me fitting the oil cooler to the car. Right, the next job after getting the oil cooler fitted is to plumb it. Now what we're going to do is fit a sandwich adapter which goes between the oil filter housing and the oil filter. 2 pipes will then come off of that. I've taken the radiator out and the oil cooler back out just basically to make it a bit easier for you guys to see. I'm hoping I don't lose too much oil and I can just knock the filter off and then put it back. We will try and service this car properly before it goes and gets shipped to its final destination. But for now, so I'm going to put the sandwich plate in and then just put the filter back on. The eagle-eyed amongst you may notice that the downpipe has been removed. That's because unfortunately it got in the way of the radiator's bottom outlet. While I couldn't do anything to move the outlet on the radiator, there was space between the downpipe and the engine block, giving me more options to route the exhaust. I will show that in a later episode. I temporarily screwed one of the pipe fittings on to help stop the flow of oil coming out the sandwich plate before tightening the sandwich plate retaining bolt. With the sandwich plate fitted, I refitted the oil filter. The hoses I will fit once the radiator is back in, so I know where to route them. Oil filters only ever need to be screwed on hand tight. Right, before we put this radiator back in, there's a bit of a modification I want to make to it. Now, the top radiator fitting here points off in that direction, and these are specially designed to go on this radiator. I can't put a hose directly on here. The issue with this though is that the thermostat is round about down here, so ideally I want to rotate it and point it that way. There's an annoying little plastic tab here on the side that is kind of stopping me from doing that, so the first thing I'm going to do is take a file to it, very carefully remove it, and hopefully be able to reposition this turned about 90 degrees. With the plastic tab filed off, I just had to continue the slot around the inlet of the radiator that the retaining clip slots into. To do this, I used a tensor. Is this the right tool? Well, has it worked? Yes. Excellent. Right. This can now go back in the car, and then we can figure out making a rubber pipe to go from this to the thermostat housing on the engine. To make the upper radiator hose, I went through my stash of leftover rubber hoses and found something that was the correct diameter and had a bend that would fit. With a suitable hose chosen, I marked where it needed to be cut and then removed it so I could trim it down to size on the bench. Is this the correct tool to trim the hose? Probably not, but it's what I have, and it works. I think the biggest thing I've learned since leaving university and entering the world of work as a mechanical engineer is that there's the ideal way of doing something, and then there's the way you have to do it given the resources you have access to. connect the bottom of the radiator up, I need a piece of hard tubing, either steel or aluminium. Now, I wouldn't ideally use this, with this is an old Nissan micro exhaust, but I've got to keep the budget in mind. Interestingly enough, those of you who've been following my channel for a while and have seen the Mini build, this is from the donor car that donated its engine to the Mini. Anyway, I'm going to cut this off here because I don't need this bit, and that'll make this a bit more of a manageable size to get in the engine bay and figure out where we can cut the rubber hoses. The reason for using steel tubing is the lower radiator pipe passes very close to the exhaust, so close in fact that, as mentioned earlier, I had to remove the downpipe from the engine, which we'll see me modify in a later episode. Apologies, I'm not quite sure what happened here to the audio, it just cut out while I was recording. Once again, I've gone through my stash of parts and come up with this fella. Now, I don't need all of this. What I really want is this about 45-degree bend off here. I believe this is from my old Renault Megane that I broke. I'm probably never going to use it. I'm never going to sell it. So we're going to hack this, and then this can be the start of our radiator hose from the bottom of the radiator up to the rest of the engine. Now, I made a bit of a mistake here. I didn't realise that the hose actually thins down after the bend, so it wasn't going to fit over the pipe. I did search through my stash of old automotive pipes again, but I couldn't find anything suitable that fitted. This led me to take some fairly extreme measures to make this work. Those extreme measures involved me making up a pair of steel reducers that I could weld into the micro exhaust pipe and fit the rubber hoses onto. Any other build, I probably would have just bought the correct size tubing. However, as I discovered that the outlet on the radiator was a different size to the inlet on the Rover's engine, this also solved that problem. Yes, you probably can buy reducers, but I had steel, time, and access to a lathe. Unfortunately, I seem to have misplaced the footage, however with the adapters made, I trimmed the micro exhaust pipe to length and then TIG welded them into the ends. Before we put this radiator back in for good, there are a few jobs I've got to address first. The first one being a broken off bolt here in a captive nut. Matt, if you're watching and if this was you, damn you. Fortunately this is quite an easy repair because I've got this replacement one from a radiator from the scrapyard. The next one is this outlet here. It's not required on the Rover, so we can put a short length of pipe on it and a plug in it. The plug you see me fitting here I machined up in a lunch break out of a very small offcut of stainless steel. And finally is this outlet here. Now this was like a plastic nipple that was molded into radiator. I didn't realise it when I bought this one that unfortunately this had snapped off. Unfortunately it's not really in our budget to go buying a replacement radiator, and that plastic nipple wasn't really compatible with the pipe that it needs to connect into. So this is going to take a bit of work. My solution to the problem was to gently file what was left of the outlet into a more rounded shape and then thread the outside of it with a BSP pipe thread so that a pipe fitting could be screwed onto it. With the radiator all prepped to go back in the car, I could fit it for the very last time. I think. As well as fitting and plumbing the radiator, I also plumbed the oil cooler. The following morning I fitted the lower radiator pipe that I welded up and trimmed the rubber hoses that will connect it to the engine and the radiator. With the lower radiator hose installed, I refitted the second fan and then set about wiring it. Fortunately, the current draw from the Honda twin fan setup is the same as the Rover's single fan, so I was able to just wire them in together. For the ends of the wire stripped, I used a cut down crimp terminal to join everything together. Due to the gauge of the wire, I had to use one of the larger battery cable crimp terminals that I've got, so this meant cracking out the hydraulic crimper. The power wire extended to the second fan, and I just had to do the same for the ground. For the additional wires added, I put some heat shrink over the joints to prevent anything from shorting out. After running the cable through some loom tube to protect it from the heat of the engine bay, I crimped on a new set of terminals for the second fan. While the plugs for the Rover and Honda fans were different, the terminals inside were the same, so all I had to do for the first fan was de-pin the connectors and push the Rover's wires into the Honda's plug. With the terminals crimped and inserted into their respective plugs, I trimmed the loom tube down and taped it up. The finishing touch to the fan wiring was to secure the cables in place. I drilled a couple of holes into the plastic fan shroud to mount a couple of salvage cable tie mounts into them and then secured the fan wiring to them.
The radiator fan's all wired in, the last thing to do is to test them. Now I've already put the kill switch in and switched the car on, so the easiest way to test these is to bridge the pins on the relay, and that should switch them both on. This is probably the moment when I find out I've wired one of them backwards.
Well, that's it for this episode. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, then please hit that like button and share. If you want to stay up to date with this build, then please hit that subscribe button and remember to turn on notifications. And finally, if you want to see more episodes in this build series, then please click the link that should be somewhere on screen around about here. Once again, thanks for watching.